She stood tied to a weather-worn fence post behind the saloon, arms above her head like some rusted-out scarecrow, barefoot, mud up to her ankles. A ragged muslin dress clung to her like wet paper, and her wrists were blistered from the coarse rope cutting in with each flinch. She was 12, maybe younger, thin as a fence rail and quieter than the wind. No one knew her name. No one asked. The crowd around her laughed, spat, gambled. Most weren't bidding on her. They were here for the card games inside, the girls upstairs the whiskey. But when a child got tied up in plain view of the town's only saloon, some men got curious, some got angry, and the worst kind got interested. One such man leaned against a broken hitching post, chewing on jerky and squinting through the dust. "Gambler's kid," he muttered. "Owes every man in town. Using her to pay off what he can't cover at the table." He didn't sound surprised. No one did. Then the wind shifted and through the trail dust came a rider tall in the saddle. Worn hat, frayed coat, and eyes that didn't blink too much. His name was Jesse James, 40 years old, a man with no sons, no daughters, and a ranch he couldn't keep together without breaking himself in half each morning. Jesse wasn't headed to town that day. He was just dropping off old tools for sharpening, maybe picking up a few supplies. But when he passed the alley and caught a glimpse of her sunken cheeks, arms trembling from the weight of staying upright, his horse stopped before he even asked it to. He stayed there a moment, jaw tight, rein slack, watching, listening. A loud voice cut through the air. $12 for the girl. 1 week's labor or permanent, your pick. She's small, but she don't eat much. The girl didn't lift her head. The gambler, thin, sour-smelling, and missing half a smile, sauntered toward the post and gave the rope a tug like she was livestock. She can clean, wash, cook a little, stronger than she looks and dumb as dirt. Won't talk back. No one moved. The crowd shifted away, losing interest. Too ugly a scene even for this town. Then Jesse dismounted. He didn't look at the gambler, didn't speak, just reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a folded cloth bundle. Inside, coins clinked. The gambler narrowed his eyes. 15. Jesse nodded once. You want her for the week? No. Permanent. Jesse paused. Then I ain't buying her, just settling your debt. The gambler chuckled. Same difference. He tossed the rope into the dirt like it was nothing. She's yours. Jesse didn't speak again. He walked over, knelt, and cut the girl loose with his pocket knife. Her arms felt too fast. She staggered, and he caught her. Not roughly, but not tenderly either. She looked up at him, startled, then quickly away. No tears, just wide, hollow eyes that had stopped asking for kindness a long time ago. They rode out of town under a sky going gray. She didn't sit behind him. He let her ride the mule alone, reins tied loosely to his horse. She clung to the saddle horn, fingers white-knuckled, and kept her face turned from the road. Dust lifted behind them like ghosts not yet done whispering. Jesse James' ranch sat 10 miles west, nestled between two rocky bluffs and framed by cottonwoods gone bare for winter. The barn was half collapsed from the last storm, the roof still leaking from the one before. Chickens wandered loose. A fence post lay crooked near the front gate. Jesse hadn't had time to fix it. The girl took it all in without a word. He led her into the main house, small, sparse. A pot of beans bubbled on the stove, the only warmth in the room. A wool blanket sat folded on the cot beside the fireplace. He pointed to it. Yours. She stood there frozen. You hungry? She nodded once. He ladled out beans into a dented tin bowl. Set it on the table. She sat. Didn't touch the spoon. Just stared at it like she didn't know what it was for. You don't got to eat it fast, he said, quieter now. She picked up the spoon, careful not to spill. When she tasted it, something in her face flinched. Not from heat, from flavor. He realized then she didn't know what it meant to eat warm food sitting down. She didn't finish, just said, "Thank you," in a voice that sounded like it came from under floorboards. He didn't ask questions. He didn't offer stories. He just lit a lamp, checked the fire and said, "I don't lock doors. You're safe here." She nodded again, but didn't move. He stepped outside to unhitch the mule. Night fell fast, and the wind came sharp through the canyon. Coyotes cried somewhere past the ridge. Jesse looked up at the stars, wondering what the hell he just brought into his life. When he came back in, she was asleep, curled on the cot, arms wrapped tight around herself like she was still tied to something. At midnight, a floorboard creaked. Jesse sat up in his chair, hand instinctively on the rifle beside him. The girl was standing there, eyes glassy. "Don't lock me in the barn," she whispered. He lowered the rifle. "I won't. I've been locked before," I figured. Silence. She walked back to her cot, curled up again. Didn't sleep the rest of the night. He didn't either. In the morning, frost glazed the window pane. The sun came up blood orange behind the ridge, casting long shadows across the kitchen floor. Jesse poured water into the kettle. His hand trembled just a little. He told himself it was the cold. Outside, a hawk circled. Inside, the girl was still on the cot, eyes wide open, staring at the ceiling. Jesse James didn't know her story. Didn't need to. He'd seen enough men do worse with less reason. All he knew was that the first thing she asked of him wasn't food or a name. It was not to be locked away. And maybe that was enough for now. She woke with the sun, though Jesse hadn't told her when to rise. No bell, no shout. Just the natural rhythm of a girl used to punishment if she didn't guess right. The quilt had slipped halfway off during the night, but she hadn't moved. She lay still, eyes open, breath quiet, like she wasn't sure if the warmth was real. Jesse was already outside, splitting kindling by the shed. His coat hung from one shoulder, and every strike of the axe echoed through the canyon like a warning to the cold. The girl stood at the threshold of the porch, unsure whether to ask permission or just step forward. She settled for neither. When he noticed her, he simply jerked his chin toward the coop. Chickens need feeding. Corn's in the sack. She went without a word, barefoot, her toes disappearing in the frost-bitten grass. By the time he finished stacking wood, she'd returned, hands red from the cold, bits of straw clinging to her skirt. He half expected a complaint. She didn't offer one, just took a seat on the steps, knees pulled to her chest, eyes on the road like she was watching for someone to come take her back. They didn't speak until breakfast. Jesse had a habit of baking once a week, though his bread came out hard as a roof tile most days. This time it was still warm, crust golden, the scent filling the tiny house like something sacred. He set a piece on her plate beside a spoonful of honey and watched, pretending he wasn't watching. She didn't move. "You can eat it." She looked at him. "All of it." He paused. "Of course, what it's there for." Her hands hovered over the bread like it might vanish if she touched it wrong. She tore a piece off, slowly held it to her lips, then stopped. "Should I save some for later?" He leaned back, letting his chair creak under his weight. "There'll be more later." She stared at him. Not quite be deceiving. He didn't push. Just got up, poured himself coffee, and looked out the window as if the land might answer the ache he couldn't name. After breakfast, she swept the floor 3 times, though it didn't need it. She scrubbed the stove's black iron belly until it gleamed like a mirror. She folded her blanket twice more before dusk. Jesse tried to tell her she didn't have to, but every time he opened his mouth, her eyes darted wide like she'd braced for a belt that never came. "She don't know what to do with warm bread," he muttered to himself that night. Or silence. Over the next week, they settled into a rhythm. Not comfort, just routine. She followed him when he checked the fence line, kept pace as best she could. When she stumbled over a loose stone and skinned her knee, she gritted her teeth and kept walking. He stopped, handed her a cloth, and said, "Ain't ashamed to hurt." She only nodded, wiping blood in silence. On the 4th evening, he caught her outside by the barn, curled beneath a wheelbarrow, not sleeping, just hiding. When he asked what she was doing, she whispered, "Just checking for what?" If the door locked from the outside, he crouched beside her, voice low. "It don't. Nothing here does." She didn't respond, but the next night she slept closer to the fire. A week passed, then another. The neighbors started talking. "Who's the girl?" asked Hank Sutter, pausing at the well with his horse. Jesse answered with a glance. "None of your concern," Sutter raised an eyebrow. Not saying it is. Just strange is all. Strange don't mean wrong, Jessie said, then walked away. By the third week, she'd begun humming barely. Only when she thought he wasn't near. A little tune off key but steady like a bird just learning its voice. Jessie pretended not to notice. She didn't ask about his wife. The grave behind the barn had no marker, only a stone with weather-soft edges. One morning the girl left a flower there. A single donation crushed and dry from the season but placed gently. Later he asked, "You miss someone?" She didn't answer. But that night she whispered, "I had a brother had." She didn't say more. Spring was trying to claw its way in. The snow was gone from the ridge and birds had returned, their calls echoing through the cottonwoods. One morning, she found a robin's egg cracked open in the grass. She picked it up and brought it inside, cradling the blue shell like it was glass. Jessie watched her from the porch and thought she's been broken too. But she still holds things gentle. The first time she laughed was by accident. Jessie had burned the cornbread black as coal, he muttered under his breath. That loaf died in vain. She tried to keep a straight face, but the snort escaped before she could bury it. Then she froze. Hand clapped to her mouth. Jessie didn't laugh back, but he smiled. "About time," he said. "Thought maybe you'd forgot how." She ducked her head, still grinning behind her palm. They had only one visitor that month. A trap-jessing tinker who'd once played cards with Jessie in better days. He noticed the girl right off. "Hired help?" "No," Jessie said simply. The man grunted. "Not your kin either." Jessie turned to her. "Go on inside, would you?" She obeyed. When the man looked back, Jessie's voice was iron. "You don't ask about her again. She ain't my business." Exactly. That night, she sat at the table longer than usual. Finally she asked, "Will you sell me back?" Jessie blinked. "What? Men buy girls? Then sell them again. That's how it works." He set his coffee down. "That ain't what happened." She tilted her head. "Then what was it?" He searched for words, took his time finding them. "I think I saw someone drowning. And maybe I was too, so I pulled you out. And you." He paused. "You pulled me too." She didn't answer, but she didn't ask again. On the 12th night, she handed him a folded paper. "What's this?" He asked. "My name." "You already told me, not the real one." He unfolded the paper for letters shaky and small but written like a promise. "Lena." Jessie didn't say anything for a long time. Just nodded. "All right then, Lena." She beamed like she'd just been given permission to exist. The next morning, Lena brought in kindling, poured coffee, and set 2 plates without being told. When Jessie sat down, he found a slice of warm bread on his plate. Not from him, from her. She watched him take the first bite. He chewed slowly, looked up and raised an eyebrow. "Little dry," she grinned. "You didn't complain about mine." He laughed for the first time since his wife passed. Outside, the wind carried bird song through the hills. Inside, the fire burned steady. And for the first time in years, Jesse James didn't eat breakfast alone. Not in his belly and not in his bones. The wind turned mean the morning they came. Jesse knew something was wrong before the dust even rose on the road. Birds went quiet. The air got that tight waiting feel like the land itself was holding breath. He was chopping wood when the dog growled low and steady, ears pinned flat. Jesse stood straight, wiped his palms on his trousers and looked east. 3 riders moving slow. DJ spare, the kind of slow that meant they didn't need to hurry because they expected everyone else to. Lena was inside washing beans. She hadn't seen them yet. Jesse didn't call her. The men dismounted before reaching the gate. The first wore a preacher's collar, stiff and clean despite the ride. His eyes held no kindness. The second was a lawman badge, crooked mustache trimmed too neat. And the third, well, Jesse didn't need a name for him. The eyes were enough. Sharp, cold and narrow. He had the gambler's smirk. Same jawline too. "Morning," Jesse said, voice even. The preacher stepped forward. "Mr. Boone." "That's right. I'm Reverend Hatch." This here's Deputy Slater. And that man's Mr. Caleb Dawes. Jessie nodded once slow. What brings you? Caleb Dawes spat in the dirt. My brother sold you something he had no right to. Jessie didn't blink. He sold me a lie. Girl was chained to a post behind the saloon. I gave him coin to cut her free. Deputy Slater cleared his throat. That coin didn't absolve anything. Legally, she's property settled through wager. There's paperwork. She ain't a mule, Jessie said. She's a child. Reverend Hatch folded his hands like in prayer, but his words came sharp. We're not here to argue philosophy. You're harboring stolen property under your roof. Unless you produce proof of guardianship, the child will be returned. Jessie felt something dark flicker behind his ribs. Not rage, not yet. Just a cold certainty that these men had come with their minds made up. She's safer here than anywhere else. She eats, sleeps, ain't chained, ain't afraid. That don't make it legal, the deputy said. Lena had stepped onto the porch without a sound. Her hair was braided, sleeves rolled, apron smudged with flour. She looked small in the doorway, but she held herself like stone. Caleb's eyes landed on her and curled into a smile that made Jessie's stomach turn. Lena, the preacher said smoothly, come here now. We'll take you home. This man's done his part. She didn't move. Girl, Caleb growled. You belong to our family. You were promised. Jessie stepped between them. She ain't going. Deputy Slater's hand twitched near his hip. You sure you want to make this official, Boone? You really want to be on the record as obstructing the law? Jessie glanced back at Lena. Her eyes weren't scared now. They were hard. Said she didn't need saving anymore. You got 7 days, Jessie said. Come back with papers or don't come back at all. Reverend Hatch's jaw tightened. The Lord frowns upon stubbornness in the face of justice. Jessie didn't answer. The 3 men mounted up again. Dust swallowed them as fast as it brought them. But the tension didn't leave with their horses. Lena spoke first. They'll come back, won't they? Yes. Then we got 7 days. She turned and walked back inside like she just added it to the list between feeding the hens and sweeping the porch. That night, Jessie couldn't sleep. He sat in the rocker near the fire, watching the flames jump like nervous hearts. He thought of his wife, her gentleness, the quiet way she had healed things with tea and silence. Lena was nothing like her. And maybe that's what made this feel like something new, not a replacement, a reckoning. Lena stayed up too, reading from an old hymn book, mouthing the words, but not singing them. At one point she whispered, If they come back and take me, what'll you do? He didn't look at her, just said, Depends how loud you scream. The week passed too fast. Jessie wired a letter to a lawyer in Junction Bluff, an old army friend who'd once owed him a favor. But law moved slow out here, slower than horses. He knew better than to hope for papers before the deadline. On the 4th day, he taught Lena how to hold the rifle. Not to shoot nobody, he said, but to feel the weight, to know you're not helpless. She nodded and cradled it like a newborn calf. Not fearfully, carefully. On the 5th, they rebuilt part of the fence together. Her hands blistered. She didn't complain. On the 6th, she asked to sleep outside just for one night, so I'll know what to do if I have to run again. Jessie laid out a blanket beside her under the stars. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. The 7th morning came pale and windless, the kind of calm that only showed up before something broke. A wagon creaked up the road just after sunrise. Not the law, not the preacher, was a woman. Skin darkened by sun, eyes sunken, voice rough as gravel. She stepped down slow, leaning on a carved cane. When she saw Lena, she dropped the cane. Mama, Lena whispered, her voice barely more than breath. Jessie froze. The woman was no older than 30, but she looked 60 from grief. She fell to her knees before Lena and clutched her so tight the girl gasped. I thought you was dead, the woman cried. I told them I'd come back. I told them not to hurt you. They sold me, Lena said softly. I know, her mother choked. I came back, but they told me you'd gone. They lied. Jessie stepped away, unsure where he belonged in this moment. But Lena turned to him. "This is my mama." He nodded. "I figured." Her mother stood on shaky legs. "I got a shack near Cotton Bend. Nothing much, but it's ours. I came to bring her home." Jessie studied her. Ragged dress, thin shoes, bruised arms. She looked like a ghost trying to remember how to live. Lena looked up at him, waiting. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. Lena walked to her mother, took her hand, then turned to Jessie. "Will you come with us?" He blinked just for a little. "Help us get the place safe." His throat felt tight. "That's your home." She stepped forward, closed her small hand around his weathered one. "It's yours too," she said. The wagon rolled out by noon. 3 souls, 1 second chance, and somewhere on the trail behind them, the preacher's words scattered in the dust and meant nothing. But the sound of a girl calling a man family for the first time that would echo across the plains forever. They traveled slow, not because the mule was tired, but because trust takes time, and no one wanted to spook it. The road to Cotton Bend wound through scrubland where the trees grew gnarled and low, clinging to red dirt like they'd survived storms that tried to yank them clean out. Lena rode in the back of the wagon with a blanket around her shoulders and her mother asleep beside her. Head tilted, mouth open from exhaustion. Jessie walked beside the mule, hand on the reins, boots dragging slightly in the dust. He hadn't meant to go this far, but when Lena asked, he couldn't say no. He never really could. Not since that night she whispered, "Don't lock me in the barn." The shack appeared near sunset, a slant roof structure leaning against a rock ridge, walls patched with tin and timber that had seen too many winters. Smoke from a tiny chimney curled upward, lazy and blue. A bent windmill creaked nearby, and the smell of pine sap hung thick in the air. "That it?" Jessie asked. Lena nodded. But her mother, Mara, stared ahead like she just remembered every bruise she ever took inside those walls. They reached the door. It groaned open with a shelf. Inside it was better than Jessie expected. Swept dry with a small table and 1 cot. A few jars lined the shelf. He saw a child's drawing tacked to the wall with a rusty nail. A woman, a girl, and what looked like a red house. The red had bled out with time like a memory stretched too thin. "She kept this," Lena whispered. Her mother smiled weakly. "It was the only thing I could carry for a while." Jessie helped start the fire, gathered dry wood, lit it with his flint, and fed it gently until it crackled. He didn't speak much. He knew when to give people silence, and this house was full of it. That night, Lena cooked beans and flatbread. Her mother dozed, waking only to murmur that the bread smelled like home. Jessie slept outside. In the morning, the wind shifted again. He smelled smoke, not cooking smoke, wildfire. He bolted upright and saw the ridge to the west glowing faintly orange like an ember flickering before it remembers its flame. He ran to the shack. Lena was already outside barefoot, staring at the horizon. "It's moving," she said. Jessie scanned the trees. W's pulling it east. "If it jumps the canyon, it'll be on us before dusk." Mara stumbled out behind them, coughing. "What do we do?" "We run," Jessie said. But Lena didn't move. She was staring at the tiny shed beside the shack. "Mama's things are in there. My books. Her papers." Jessie glanced at the sky. "Not worth your life." Lena looked at her mother. "What if we don't get back?" Mara's face crumpled. Jessie made the choice for them. "I'll get it. You get the mule ready." Lena opened her mouth to protest, but he was already moving. The shed was padlocked with a bent nail. Jessie ripped it off with his knife and shoved the door open. Inside a trunk, some old linens, a wrapped bundle of dried herbs. He grabbed what he could, stuffed them into his coat, and sprinted back as the first ash drifted down. By afternoon, the fire had crowned the ridge. Trees screamed as they burned. Smoke wrapped the valley like a closing fist. They rode out just in time. Behind them, the ridge burned red, angry, alive, consuming. Mara wept. Lena didn't. She watched it burn and said quietly, "It took everything again." Jessie looked at her. Not everything. They rode until they reached a creek where the water still ran clear and cold. They camped there, made coffee from the last of the grounds, and said little. That night, Lena sat beside Jesse, their backs against a rock still warm from the day. I thought if we came here, maybe something would heal, she said. It did, he answered. She turned. How can you say that? The fire took it all. Fire burns what's dead, Jesse said. But it don't kill what's already living. Lena blinked slowly like she was taking that in word by word. I kept thinking this place would fix things. She whispered that I'd see Mama in her home and something would feel right. But all I saw was what we lost. He nodded. That don't mean it ain't worth remembering, he said. But you don't got to live in it. She didn't answer. But when he stood to walk back toward the fire, she followed without hesitation. In the morning, they returned to the remains of the shack. The walls were blackened. One side caved in. But something caught Lena's eye near the stump out front. A book slightly scorched but intact. She picked it up, dusted it off. Inside was her drawing untouched. She held it to her chest and smiled for the first time in days. Guess fire didn't win everything, she said. No, Jesse said. Not even close. As they packed the mule again, Mara leaned on Jesse's arm a little longer than needed. You didn't have to do all this, she said. No, but I'm glad I did. She studied him. You ever think about making something permanent again? He didn't answer right away. But Lena looked between them, quiet, hopeful, the way only someone who'd known loss could be. Jesse placed the book in the saddlebag. Let's get home first, he said. Then we'll see what still wants to grow. They turned toward the road. Behind them, the ridge still smoldered. But ahead, the wind smelled like rain. Not be why the time they made it back to the ranch, the fence was gone. Jesse stared at the smoldering post. Charred wood still hissed beneath the ash like the ground itself was grieving. The wind carried a bitter scent of oil, scorched rope, and rage. This wasn't wildfire. It was human, measured, met. Lena stepped down from the mule slow. Her mother clutched the saddle, trembling from the road, eyes wide with a dread she couldn't voice. But Lena, 12 years old, feet blistered, heart stitched from scraps, just stood there, not afraid, not surprised. Jesse walked the perimeter in silence. Boot prints everywhere, at least 3 men. He could tell by the depth of the prints that one of them limped. Caleb Doss. They had waited, washed, and when no one was home, they'd made their move. Inside the house, the furniture was overturned. Jesse's wife's rocking chair had been hacked apart with a hatchet. The rifle was gone. His ledger too. And scrolled on the door with charcoal was one word, thief. Mara covered her mouth, but Lena stepped forward, fingers grazing the black letters. They want us scared, she said. That's all this is. Jesse looked at her. Really looked. There was something in her now. Something forged in the red glow of the ridge. Something that wouldn't be broken again. The girl who once whispered, "Don't lock me in the barn," was gone. What stood in her place was steel. We're not running again, she said. Jesse nodded. No, we're not. They started fixing things by first clearing the wreckage. Mara gathered the chairs upright and swept glass into a bucket. Lena untied what was left of the hay bundles and spread them to dry. Jesse rebuilt the front step by sunset. Each nail drove down with purpose. That night, they slept in shifts. Jesse kept the shotgun across his lap. Mara leaned against the wall with a blade tucked in her sleeve. Lena didn't sleep. She just sat near the fire, watching the door like it might breathe. At dawn, someone knocked. Not heavy, just steady. Jesse answered with the shotgun raised. On the porch stood Hank Sutter. He didn't flinch. Word's gotten round, Hank said. Some men think you took what wasn't yours. Some others think you saved her life. I know which I'd be. Just Jesse lowered the gun. I brought nails, Hank added, holding up a sack and planks. We're going to need a few more hands if we're patching that fence. Behind him, 3 more neighbors waited. One held wire. Another had stew. Mara stepped forward, hesitant. Hank tipped his hat. Ma'am. Lena stayed on the porch, arms folded, watching, always watching. By noon, a dozen people were at work. Someone brought fresh water from the well. Someone else offered blankets. No one asked questions. They just built. Caleb Dawes rode in near sundown. He didn't come with a badge or preacher. Just himself and the sour grin that had once made girls flinch. "Looks like you got a party," he said, dismounting slow. Jesse didn't reach for the shotgun this time. He walked toward him steady. Caleb spat. "You think this changes anything? She's still marked. Property. You got no papers." "She's not property," Jesse said. Caleb laughed. "You going to marry her mama? Make it legal that way. You really want a burned-out widow and a pharaoh brat for your trouble?" Lena stepped down from the porch. She didn't speak. She slapped Caleb across the face so hard the sound echoed through the hills. The men stopped working. No one spoke. Caleb's cheek burned red. "You don't get to talk about my mother," Lena said. Voice quiet but deadly clear. "And I don't belong to you." Caleb sneered. "Little wild cat thinks she's grown." Jesse stepped beside her. "She's not wild. She's brave. That's more than I can say for a man who only shows up when the fire's out." Caleb's hand hovered near his belt. But too many men stood behind Jesse now. Too many eyes watching. He didn't draw. He mounted his horse. "You'll regret this," he said. "No," Jesse said. "I won't." Caleb turned and rode off without looking back. When he was gone, Lena turned to Jesse, chest rising and falling fast. Her hands still shook. "I was scared," she admitted. "I know, but I didn't run." "No," he said, "you didn't." That night, they ate together by the fire. The stew was warm, the bread soft, and when Mara sang a lullaby from some long-ago memory, Lena rested her head on her shoulder without flinching. Jesse watched them. Something deep in his chest uncoiled. For the first time in years, he let himself lean back in the chair and close his eyes just for a minute without fearing what might come in the dark. Later, as the fire burned low, Lena looked up at him. "Do you think I'm still broken?" He didn't answer right away. He walked to the old cabinet, pulled out his wife's carving knife, and handed it to her. "It's not about being broken," he said. "It's about what you do after." She took it gently, the blade gleaming in the fur jesset. And then she smiled. Not because she was fixed, but because she wasn't hiding anymore. In time, people forgot how she got there. They remembered her bread, her stories, her stubbornness. And when she rode into town years later with her own wagon, with her own name on the ledger, no one called her wild. They called her Boone because names are earned. And fire. Fire only changes everything if something new is waiting in the ash. This story, well, it ain't just about rescue. It's about what comes after. And if you're lucky, like Jesse James was, the person you save might just save you back.